the dawn of capitalism, when corporations as mighty as nations rule the seas and dominate the world's valuable trade routes. With an iron fist, they forge a path of tyranny and exploitation, igniting a battle for global supremacy. From the Indian Ocean, a flood of exotic goods feed new addictions and fill coffers with coins tainted in blood. And where there is blood, there are predators.
So the Skull and Bones beta wrapped up, and I wanted to give some quick thoughts on the game. Ubisoft's quadruple A game, which is absolutely absurd, by the way, is actually better than you might have thought it'd be. First, I want to mention that I played for about 8 hours of this game, or this beta, I should say. I didn't finish all the story quests, but I did enough of its content that I have a pretty good idea of it all, at least what was available here. So let's just get into it. Right off the bat, I'll say that I pretty much had no expectations for this. Yes, I liked Black Flag and its ship missions, but I never did that many of them. And the idea that a game is going to be 90% of that didn't really appeal to me at all. However, after playing the beta, that might have changed. Also, the front end of this video is going to be extremely negative, but that's just the way it goes. I'm actually kind of surprised because they gave us full access to the game up into a certain story point, so nothing is really blocked off from doing, and it's basically how the early game will be when the game comes out, which is on February 16th, which is kind of funny because when you boot up the game, they try and call this game a work in progress and how many things can change, yet the game comes out in just a few days. So after starting it for the first time, the opening of this game is actually pretty cool. It's highly scripted, of course, but it kind of sets the stage for the game and how the early combat is going to work. I'm going to be honest, after the initial intro, the opening of the game pretty much falls off a cliff completely for the first hour or so. It's absolutely fucking boring, and it also made me want to just say fuck it and uninstall the game, but I'm glad I didn't. Once you get through the bullshit and arrive at the main hub area, called St. Anne, it picks up pretty much right away, and the game shines from this point for the most part, or at least in a lot of ways. Now, this game is not going to be for everyone. For example, traveling through the world on a ship can be super boring and often takes forever. It's basically a simulator type of game, and you are the ship. While there are sections where you can get off the ship and walk around, it's more or less just for the hub area, and there's no real gameplay to be had there. It's pretty much just a way for them to tell you the forgettable story they're trying to tell and to do upgrades and things like that. It's one of those games where you completely forget what the NPCs are telling you during the cutscene as soon as the cutscenes are over. If I didn't have to go through my own footage for this video, I'd have no idea what's going on in the story at all. Hell, I'll probably forget by the time I'm finished. In my opinion, they should have just made a live service pirate-themed Assassin's Creed game where half the game is what this game is trying to be and the other half is, well, I don't know, an actual game. There isn't really a game like this though, outside of Black Flag and maybe Sea of Thieves, which I'm not too sure about because I've never played it. But let's get into more detail about the beta, starting from the beginning. I'm going to recount some of my experience with the early game so you can get an idea of what it's like. I'm not going to go step by step through my entire experience, just early stuff and some key things that I really liked or disliked as they pop up. Anyways, so after the intro where you get annihilated, the game lets you make a character. The character creator itself is a bit lacking. It's very basic, but it gets the job done. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of the same-ish looking characters, to be honest. So after that, you're rescued by a couple of uninteresting, mid-written characters.
The British and the forbidden. I blame Captain Russell for steering us into these cursed shallows.
We survived the battle, and now you arrived to help through the Dow. I would say our fortune's on the rise, no? There's a certain yearning in your eyes. I've seen the same glint in others before. I'm sure you will steer us true to St. Anne.
To reach pirate paradise, we must first know the way.
The writing and acting in general is pretty generic. Then again, it's Ubisoft, so what do you really expect here? You land at your first area where you're given a mission or two. Very tutorial type stuff here. Fetch quests, running around doing absolutely nothing. As I said before, after the intro, the game falls off for a little while. This is where I first found out that you can actually get off your ship. Unfortunately, there's no use for it other than being able to run around the hub, cooking, crafting, and upgrading type shit. No actual worthwhile gameplay here. You're then sent off to get whatever cargo Captain Dickhead sent you to get, and I shit you not, it consists of little more than getting on the shitty little boat you get rescued on, pressing F on some boxes in the water, then sailing right back to Captain Dickhead. I did find a separate island here, but guess what? You land on the shore for no reason, run around for no reason, get back on your raft to go turn in your quest. Again, extremely boring. Like, I know that it's just a tutorial to get you used to sailing around, getting on and off your ship, looting and whatnot, but I mean, come on. They could have come up with something better than that. Like, literally anything. So you turn in your quest, and Captain Dickhead tells you to go fuck yourself.
Thanks for the goods. Skerlock may well spare my head, but I cannot say the same for you. After I tell him about the captain who failed to protect his cargo, find your own way to St. Anne, chum sniffer. I don't owe you a sliver up your ass, especially when mine's on the line. Now fuck off, built rat.
Which in itself is actually kind of cool. You do a favor or a quest for someone and he basically betrays you when you go to turn it in. It's pretty piratey. You have to go to some broken ship and do the lamest mini game I've seen in a while. And this mini game is the main way to harvest trees, plants, ships, whatever. Is that it? That's such a shitty minigame, dude. What the fuck is that? You literally just tap the button when the dial goes to the yellow or green. That's it. You have to do this a lot. I did find some usable cannons on this ship, which is a little odd since this gameplay isn't even a thing in the entire game, or at least in the beta. I guess it's supposed to teach you how to aim and fire cannons when you're on your ship, but we literally just did that in the intro, so I'm not sure why this is included. It's also here where I noticed something. Every time there's a transition, the screen fades to black. This happens for literally every transition. Using these particular cannons, embarking and disembarking your ship at the hub, talking to quest givers that trigger a cutscene, everything. Why? It's not a big deal, but you'd think for a game that was in development for over half a decade, it would be more modern in this regard. Anyways, this drag of a section is over, and now we're almost at the good stuff. You set sail to the main hub, which thank God is a title card and doesn't make you actually sail all the way there. This can't really be said for the rest of the game, but we'll get there later. After some brief snippets of environments and realizing apparently every single Ubisoft studio that ever existed worked on this game, you're finally at the main hub, St. Anne. You're then supposed to talk to Captain Shitboy here, the king of all dick suckers, to get your next quest. I did forget to mention that there is a dialogue system where you get to choose what you want to say. It's very limited and lackluster, but it is a nice touch. It's better than your silent protagonist just standing around and nodding. I'm gonna skip over this town shit and get to the point of the game. You literally just run around talking to NPCs, learning how to craft and shit. It's really not particularly interesting at all. So after all that, you get your new ship, you set sail, and something awesome happens.
Find yourself a wanton quarter bottom of the sea. Yo ho, yo ho, the sea's forever roll. Yo ho, yo ho, the wind's forever blow. Cast your eyes at sea. Sail on not but skull and bones. Yo ho. So me boys, bottoms up, raise the sails, drink with me. Here's to us.
Alice,
Long,
grab the
long
dogs!
live piracy.
Yes, your crew does piratey singing while sailing around. I loved this. It makes traveling through the world a lot more immersive. This was also a highlight in Black Flag, from what I can remember, and it's pretty much the same thing here. One of the best parts of the game, actually. This is where I noticed that the water physics and how the water interacts with your ship, making it sway and whatnot, is pretty damn cool, and it gets way better in a bit. But it's also where the first really issue, and I say that in quotation marks, comes up. While this might sound stupid, this is where it fully kicked in that yes, this is indeed a boat game. The traveling is, well, not particularly exciting. You are quite literally the ship. Yes, you made a character and you can walk around and then your character goes on the ship, but you are the ship. I know, crazy, right? What this means is that there's little to no interaction between the player and actually going from point A to point B. This is, of course, when you're not in combat or anything. There's 3 acceleration speeds here. Slow as dicks, medium okay speed, and fast as fuck, boy. The latter acting as sort of a sprint, where there's a stamina bar that drains, then you have to slow down to like speed 2 and wait for the stamina to refill. But as you can imagine, it's about as unengaging as it sounds. If all you want to do is go somewhere with no combat, no action, you're literally just sitting there staring at your screen and pressing left and right accordingly, since the ship accelerates on its own. So anyways, you get into your first proper battle. Shoot the other ship as you would, very similar to Black Flag. It functions pretty much the exact same way from what I can remember. I haven't played Black Flag since it came out though, so don't quote me on that. Anyways, so I fuck up this enemy ship and an absolutely beautiful prompt shows up on the screen when it's at low health. Crew boarding. This is where I got hyped as fuck, only to do it and find out this happens.
Oh, come on, dude. Oh man, that sucks.
I cannot express how disappointing this was, especially since it's one of the best parts about Black Flag. All you get here is a little cutscene and extra loot. What the fuck? It really does feel like half a game, like they should have made another pirate Assassin's Creed game, as I said. I know I'm being pretty negative this whole time, especially given the title of the video, but it gets better, I promise. So after what can only be described as the most disappointing thing a pirate game could ever do, you turn in your quest, blah blah blah, and this is the point I started to have a lot of fun. I get to the next quest area with another player, and this is where the game truly started to shine. The music here, the high winds making waves massive, knocking you off balance, cannons firing all over the place, your crew and your enemy's crew screaming and shit. This was awesome. And even though it's a ship mechanic in the game, trying to get close to weakened ships so you can board them and loot them mid-combat is pretty exhilarating. I did have to use a lot of imagination here though, since as I said, the mechanic is disappointing trash. After being completely outnumbered and outgunned, I fled.
Can y'all fucking move? Holy shit, dude. Look at this bullshit, dude. Okay, let me get the fuck out of here. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Sailing back to the hub while your crew was singing after such an awesome naval fight was extremely cool. I cannot stress it enough. And my next combat encounter was just as good, maybe even better. It's also at this point the traveling by ship started to grow on me. I started to enjoy it. It was fun in a boring, immersive kind of way. Anyways, I get my next quest, and as I'm sailing to the marker, going further and further into the sea, it started to get a little interesting. As you're getting closer to the objective, you notice that the waves are getting bigger, and not in the same way as I just previously mentioned. The winds are getting louder, rain is starting to come down, and there's lightning off in the distance. You're sailing into a storm. Not only is this visually awesome, I had to literally have a fight in these conditions. It's hard to show how awesome this was. It's something that you actually have to play. I do feel a lot of people probably won't find it to be particularly special. That goes for the gameplay in general. I mean, it's slow. There isn't much going on, but to me, this was the first damn near 10 out of 10 moment that I had, and possibly the only one. Especially since this battle lasted around 10 minutes. Of course I was underleveled, which I didn't know at the time, and got destroyed. Which brings us to the next mechanic, death. This game has an almost Souls-like death mechanic. That being, when you die, all your cargo remains at the spot where you died. Your total HP is reduced by a quarter. This makes it interesting when you're out on the water for a long period of time and happen to die a few times. There was one point my health was literally cut in half because I died twice, and I had to travel a long distance to get to the main hub to repair my ship, since you can only repair your total HP at shores. Oh, and other players can go grab your shit if you don't make it back in time, which to me is hilarious. Luckily though, you have two options when dying. Respawn at the hub, which could be far away from where you died, allowing you to repair your max HP right away, or respawn at sea, which spawns you more or less exactly in the same spot, but like I mentioned, with 25% of your health gone. I personally enjoyed this mechanic, but I can imagine it can get really fucking annoying at certain points, especially with other players being able to steal your cargo, and if you have a lot of shit, yeah, that could be some bullshit. I like it though. Speaking of other players, I should also mention that there doesn't seem to be any PvP when roaming around. I've smashed into and shot other players and nothing happens.
Oh, bro! Oh shit, you fucking idiot.
I'm personally disappointed by this, but I get why they made it that way. Hopefully there's a more hardcore server or something that enables PvP at all times. This is where another really cool thing happened. I came across a ship needing help.
Please tell me I can rob them instead.
They offered me a pretty decent reward if I helped them. However, being a pirate game, I decided to say fuck that and board and robbed them instead.
Just rob their ass instead. I'm not helping you. Oh wait, really? That's all you get is bread? I should have helped them. Fuck.
And what did I get for that? Bread. No money, no valuable materials, just bread. This was lame as shit because it makes it so there's no reason to do anything but help these people. In a pirate game, I'm at a fucking loss here. All this to say that there is a lot of fun to be had here. The open world, sailing around and trying to roleplay as a pirate, but a lot of it seems gimped. They really want you to play the game their way, which kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion. I also did a sort of bandit camp, if you will. It was called Plundering, and it was a village, but it's really just taking out a tower and some ship reinforcements, but it was fun as hell nonetheless. Especially since another player joined in. It was a ton of fun doing this little event with someone. And if you have a full team, I'd imagine shit like this will be epic. It really just depends how repetitive these things might get. And since it is a Ubisoft game, I'm gonna guess very. Here in the beta though, it was great. The rest of my experience goes pretty much the same. There's other good stuff here, of course. There's plenty of ship and character customization. Ship customization including weapons, of course, different armor with various different stats, things they call furniture, which give you different buffs like bonus attack damage or other more situational effects, along with different wheels and other things of that nature that, you'd expect. There's also different animals you can choose to have on your ship, but they're pretty much just cosmetic. They sit there in your view in first person, and that's pretty much it. And of course, character customization is clothing. A lot of it looks like shit, but there's some decent stuff here. Not much to say about it. It's what you'd expect. The mission structure here is basic live service stuff, right? Go here, get this, kill this, collect that, etc. These games live and die on their gameplay, in my opinion, and the combat here is good enough that I think people who are a fan of this type of game will be entertained for quite some time. One of the major downsides to me though is that most of the enemy ship attacks don't seem to have the red highlight like they did in Black Flag, which kind of makes combat rather confusing at first. You see, there's this bracing mechanic where you hold down the spacebar to hunker your crew down and negate a certain amount of damage. Black Flag had this as well. However, knowing when you're supposed to use it can be tricky at first here, since, as I said, there's usually no indicators as to when the enemy ship is about to fire their cannons or whatever. Mortar attacks generally display this, but most attacks don't seem to. It's not the worst thing, but learning to have good reaction times to when you hear the enemy cannons and then bracing is tough at first. I got used to it, but I can see this being annoying for a lot of people. Another mechanic that was incredibly annoying is the wind mechanic. The wind blows in various different directions, which is indicated on the bottom of the screen, and if you're unlucky enough to have it blowing towards you, which is a lot of the time, it halts your speed and makes you go even slower than you'd be going without sprinting. It just makes traversing through the world more of a chore than it needs to be. One other nitpick of sorts are these pirate bonfires. When you stop off at a island or settlement outside of the main hub, you can find these bonfires that you throw powder into. These give you a buff to stamina, which is nice. However, having to constantly go to where these are located on the island, which after the first time you have little to no reason to ever explore, was annoying to me. In my opinion, these should just be on the shore, so you can stop by, grab the buff, and be on your way. Instead, you have to run around this island until you find it, which, as I said, after the first time of finding one, it gets annoying because you have no reason to run around the island, ever. Especially if you forget where it is on each of these particular islands, you're basically just wasting your time running around just to grab a buff. It should just be on the shore. All in all though, I think it's a really fun game and there's plenty of fun to be had. It's definitely way better than I thought it was. I thought it was just going to be a boring mess of dog shit. Ship combat is simple but extremely fun. Traversing is immersive, almost to a fault. It'll depend on the player, but to be honest, people play games where they literally do a job, or games like Microsoft Flight Sim and shit. So I think a lot of people who are into these types of games or want kind of like a pirate ship game won't have much issue with traveling. It's certainly not as tedious as some of those job games, that's for sure. The crew singing, along with all the random stuff dotted around the place, really just enhances everything as well. However, bumping into anything makes your crew stop singing, which is a shame, but at least you can make them sing whenever you want, so you can just start it back up. But I mean, there's also a lot of problems, as I've mentioned. The writing and story is generic and boring, to the point I don't even remember what anyone's name is, or what they even said to me most of the time. You can skip all the cutscenes and it literally wouldn't matter at all. The acting is nothing to be surprised by. Character creator could use more options like sliders and just more options for hair and whatnot in general. Lots of characters are gonna end up looking the same. Like I said, how boarding works in this pirate game should be considered a crime, and the people who made it this way should have to spend at least 20 years in prison at the minimum. Enemy attacks can be confusing at times, but all in all, I'd say this is a pretty good game for the game it's trying to be. It's not amazing or anything, but it's not dog shit trash either. I don't want to put a rating on a beta, let alone one I didn't even fully complete, but if I were to rate the experience I had, I'd say it's a 6 out of 10. Slightly above average, right on the border of being pretty damn good, but it just has too many flaws. Hopefully a lot of them get ironed out with patches, or maybe are less of an issue as you progress through the full game, but I guess we'll see. That's all though. Peace.